Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We're your hosts, Adriana M.A. and
Jackie Sanders. We are two art professionals sharing forth the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journeys.
We talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
If you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you'll be notified if we launch an episode every Tuesday.
On today's podcast, we're really excited to welcome with us in person, especially if you're watching this on video, Amanda Jeanne. Amanda is an American abstract expressionist painter based in Quebec City in Canada. She paints to find freedom, calm her anxious mind, and remind herself that beauty can be found in chaos. She paints to find her place in the world. She graduated from the New England School of Photography in 2005, and a few years back, she began her journey as a self-taught abstract painter. Amanda paints and travels at various art events, including paint battles in parts of Canada, as well as Massachusetts and North Carolina. And today she is joining us in person here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So welcome to the podcast,
Thank
Amanda.
you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Our first ever in-person guest.
Yeah, it's
so
exciting.
first for both of us. Love it.
How many episodes in? Yeah. We did have a pandemic in between, to be fair.
Yeah.
So there is that. But I think most of the guests that we bring on the podcast, we met them or we reached out or we went to an event, they were there. Amanda was the opposite. Amanda actually found us. Yeah. Do you remember how you found us? Was it the podcast
I
first?
did. I actually went back and looked at it because I saw this question. I was like, great, how did I first meet them? I actually think I found your Instagram first and sort of following you on Instagram, heard about the podcast through that, found the podcast, and like listened to all of the episodes you had released up to that point, like binged them.
That's amazing.
And then that's when I heard about the Level Up membership. And I was like, yes, that's what I want.
Oh,
So, yeah.
The power of social media,
That's
everyone.
right. That's right. People rag on Instagram. They say, no, I love Instagram.
It's true, especially I feel like in the arts community. Like, it's not just stalking people on social media. You're networking.
Exactly.
You call it. I'm just
Exactly.
working on my digital networking,
Yes.
aka stalking amazing art accounts. So we are so glad to have you as a listener on the podcast, and as you mentioned, also a Level Up artist on our weekly live calls. I've gotten to know you and your work. But how would you describe your work to someone who hasn't seen your artwork before?
Just someone that hasn't seen it. It's chaotic. I use a lot of bold colors, and a lot. That's pretty much it. Chaotic and bold, and kind of the kind of piece. My goal is to create something that forces you to stop and look at it and take a minute out of whatever you're doing to just be in the moment with the art. So
that's super awesome. No, I love that. And also on some of your videos on social media and whatnot, I like sometimes it looks like you're dancing and you're just like in the mood. So it isn't just like chaotic colors a la, I don't know, Pollock. Let's go with that.
right.
There's actually more to it. Like there's movement, there's rhythm, there's like this energy that you're fusing.
Absolutely.
Into it. So
I listen to a lot of music while I paint, and I hope that reflects in the canvas, because that's sort of my goal, to make music visible almost sometimes.
I think it does. I definitely think it does. But before you started painting, as we mentioned just a few minutes ago, you did go to school for photography.
I did.
So how did you get into photography, and what kind of photos or events were you most interested in taking at the time?
Photography I first actually got into because I finished high school, couldn't find a job, and was looking through the paper, and my mom saw a job for a school photographer and said, you like kids? You're kind of artsy. How about this? And that's where I first started even thinking about the idea of photography. And then from there, I took a class at the museum, fell in love with the dark room, and then decided to go to school for it. So
that's super cool. And I feel like that's kind of where some people's creative passions start. You kind of stumble into it, or it's like one little seed that's planted out of necessity or convenience, or just, I don't know, a random act of chance. And then you're like, wait, what is this creative life looking like?
Yeah, and it's been really interesting as I was thinking about the switch from photography to painting, because I started out doing portraits, school portraits, and then did portraits for a long time. I majored in portraits and weddings. So I used to do weddings. I did newborn portraits, family portraits, things like that.
So definitely more like commercial,
Yeah.
like job focused.
And I went
event
to a school that was, sadly it is no more, but it was a 2-year professional program. So it was with more of an eye toward making it a career that you can actually make money at, not as much high art, which you can make money at that too, but it's a different path.
The more traditional, hey, I'm gonna hire you for X event, you document X event, and then you deliver photos.
Yes, and probably because of the way I was raised, I was like, well, I need to make it. I need to make money. So
right.
I need to have a job at the end of this. And that's why I went sort of more in that direction rather than the fine art at first. So
yeah. So what was that challenge like switching from photography to painting? Or what made you first become interested in shifting to painting from photography?
Well, I did photography for many years, not professionally. I mostly did it for myself. Pictures of my kids, and I kept a personal blog for a lot of years and documented all of that. But then I sort of got burned out of photography and moved away from it. And then I was sort of dabbling in all different sorts of media, all different creative pursuits. I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in. I knew it wasn't photography, but I tried, embroidery and drawing and painting and all this stuff. But the painting, once I tried it, there was no going back.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, no, this is it. This is what I like. This is perfect.
Yeah. And I'm sure just being like, of course, being a creative mind and having that vision, but like it's a very different process being so much more tactile than photography.
Yes. And it's interesting because I find myself doing a lot of the same thing, looking at things the same way as I would in photography. Because in photography, I would line up my shot, look for repetition in the shot, and see where the light's coming and watch where the focus is pulling. And I do the same thing in painting. It's just with a different medium.
Which makes sense because a lot of the same elements of composition and design are about the same. Like golden ratio can be used.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or there's a whole bunch of them, but that's an easy.
Yeah, it wasn't that. It didn't feel like that big of a shift. I'm still using the same parts of my brain that like I said, that pattern recognition and watching where light comes from and things like that. So
that is super awesome. How about like in terms of the process itself and figuring out what you want it to portray, whether it was through a photo versus a painting? Do you feel like you're approaching them similarly? Like you say, I want to create a series of paintings or photos, right, of X particular subject. I'm going to kind of journal about this topic, and then I'm going to go and get the shots / make paintings about it. Like, are you approaching it similarly in that sense?
Well, with the photography, I never really came up with projects ahead of time. It was much more documenting what was happening, whether it be a wedding or my own kids at home, growing up. It was sort of just documenting what was happening in front of me. Whereas with the painting, I will more come up with a topic and then kind of see it through and turn those into paintings.
It's almost like with photos, you're documenting it as it is. With painting, you're translating your experience.
Yeah, and when I first started painting, I tried a lot of, like, I pull up photos and try to do a painting of a photo, and none of them really clicked for me, so I sort of abandoned that idea and focused on abstract art. And now I've sort of come full circle, and I'm getting back into portraits. It's been really interesting.
Yes, you are.
Having that
happen. I mean, in some of them you have a photo.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, you have to take the detour to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I feel like with that journey, I mean, going from photography, of course, capturing real life, then going more tactile with painting, going extreme abstract, and now making slight waves towards portraiture work. You also have changed your process of painting too. Can you tell us a little bit about your current studio space, what that process looks like? And interestingly enough, on social media, seeing all the art battles you've been doing. So what does that process look like now?
Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot since I first started. It's definitely very different. So when I'm at home, my studio space, I have an indoor space and an outdoor space. In the summertime, I love to be outside. So I have that space there. And usually for me, like I said, with my paintings, I don't plan them out visually ahead of time. It's sort of more, I go into it with a feeling, with a I set the vibe,
Mm-hmm.
and then jump into the painting and just sort of see what happens. And that's regardless of whether I'm working inside or outside, but that's sort of the main thing is creating the environment that I want to create in.
Mm-hmm.
And then it opens up the space for me to just jump into it and just create.
Yeah, and you typically paint, like, do you painting by yourself? Of course, being a home studio, you're bound to have some interactions with other kiddos or family members that come through, but it's mostly a solo activity,
it's
right?
very much just me by myself, with the headphones on in the studio, or with the music turned up loud.
Sometimes.
And I've been trying to get,
videos.
at a certain point, after a few months of getting my feet, getting my bearings, I was like, all right, I need to start recording these so I can kind of, I almost played it back like game tape, like watch myself create a painting and notice what are the steps I take. And I almost kind of used that to figure out my process a little bit.
I think that's a great way to do it, because you're almost like you're removing yourself a bit when you watch back that footage. And or just like to make observations like, oh, I didn't realize I do this motion a lot, or oh, now I'm seeing this is the general trend of my process. Because I feel like as artists, we're so ingrained, and like it's hard for us to think of a process that isn't our own because it's so inherently us. So sometimes even when we try to shy away, like I'm gonna start this crazy new style, and then you show it to a friend and they're like, well, yeah, that's absolutely your work. Like even if we think like no one's gonna think it's consistent with my style, but like no, that's inherently you. Like you almost can't escape it.
Yeah, that's sort of how I feel with my current shift into portraiture. It's like it still looks very much the same style, even though it's very different.
Yeah, and it probably feels initially may have like felt extremely out of your comfort zone, like a huge divergence. But then looking back, you're like, oh, that was kind of that seamless transition. It makes total sense.
Absolutely.
Plus, those videos are great too, because then you'll find a spot in the painting where you're like, no, stop.
Absolutely.
That was my favorite part. No.
It's painful to watch myself screw up.
But
destruction.
Instead of screw up, it's a learning opportunity.
There you go. I like that.
But it's good because sometimes I feel like if you see the video, you can go back and go, I could have stopped there. And I didn't have to keep going. And it's almost like a way to help train yourself in a way to say, okay, you can stop a little sooner, let it marinate, come back tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes that's it.
It's all you need. It's just a day to watch.
But I feel like the videos help kind of train you a little bit for that. Because otherwise you're like, I could have gone. And then it's like, wait, I reached the magic point in 20 minutes. I thought I was 2 hours in before I got there. But it's only when you review it. But I do have to ask you, like following up on what Jackie was saying, because, okay, this is all great. Even when you're doing videos for social media, right, and documenting some of what you're doing, you're still by yourself and you can always still delete it. Versus art battle.
Yeah, and it's funny
that you said
20 minutes. Yeah, when you said 20 minutes, I was like, right. That ties it back.
So how did you get started with art battles? How were you first introduced to them? And then what is that process like?
Honestly, the answer is going to be social media. It was an ad on Facebook.
Love
that popped up for an event local to Quebec City, which is where I live. And I was like, that sounds kind of interesting just to go to. I didn't think, I'm not going to apply to this. That's for real artists. Because I still have a little bit of that, right? But I kind of on a whim, I was like, you know what? They still say they're accepting applications. I'll just send one in and see. And I got accepted. It was the first one that's been done in Quebec City. So they are like, it's a newly established there.
Right. So you don't have like many, if any at all, like established art battle artists there. So like everyone's probably new to it.
It was everyone's first time.
Which is great.
But the way it works is we have 20
You're a
minutes.
founder pioneer in the city.
Exactly. Yeah. And now I'm a veteran because I've done all of the ones in Quebec City.
There you go.
But it's great. It's just 20 minutes to create a painting it's in front of people. And which is a little daunting, but
are there like scale restrictions? Are you able to come in with like the foundation of a painting, or is it like start to finish?
No, start to finish. They actually give you the canvas. It's, Yeah, it's a 16 by 20 canvas.
So they really set the parameters, like the artists just come in.
Yeah, there are different battle rules. Some places do it like only with the materials that they provide. Some provide open materials, which are the ones I've done. I've always brought my own stuff, and they're pretty flexible. I know sometimes some places do a theme, which none of the ones I've done has done a theme. But so it's sort of, makes it very interesting to have, you have a total of 12 different artists painting each time. And to see the way that 12 different people approach the same 16 by 20 canvas with the same 20 minutes, it's fascinating. And I find that really interesting, which is, I think, what's kept me going back, even though I'm not an award-winning art battler.
Yes.
I've got another one coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic. I've learned something new every time that I've gone to a battle, because the way that it's structured is there's 2 first rounds. So 6 artists go up against each other and paint, and then 6 more artists go up against each other. The top 2 from each of those advance, so it's like a bracket.
Yeah.
The top 2 advance to the final round and do another 20-minute painting.
Who decides who wins? Is it like a point system?
Audience.
Oh, just audience
voting.
Oh,
Yeah.
Whoa, that's savage.
Yeah, so audience voting either in the bar or online. You can actually also vote online. So you can watch online and get the app, and it's kind of about who brings the most friends.
That's fair.
So
That's fair.
You have no stage fright then. Like,
yes and no.
like my brain's like, I would be frozen. I'd be like, don't look at me, I'm painting the
Well,
logo.
it's interesting because I actually, like, when I was in high school, I used to do theater. So like, I love being on stage. I love being the
like
center of
performance.
attention.
Okay.
I am a
That
performer
explains the
at heart.
dancing. That
Yeah.
explains the dancing in the videos. Yeah.
Yep, yeah, and when I did I think it was my second battle, I did one in Boston, and that's where I sort of, and that's a more established. There's a lot of people that have been doing it for years, and I noticed that it's not just about the art; it's also about the performance, the show, the showmanship, and engaging the audience and sort of making that be part of it. And I've really enjoyed the mix of that performance and art aspect. So that's been nice.
Yeah, my brain goes to you wearing like unicorn jammy and then just like dancing and then like swishing the unicorn tail. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's part
people
of it,
get
right?
people get into it like that. There
I'm
was
sure
a
they get, like,
girl at
super-
the last one I was at that did it barefoot, and she was like slinging paint like all over the place in the bar, and like
It's a
really just
performance.
going for it.
Yeah.
But
It's super fun. So
Oh, that's so cool. And so do you see that being like an integral part of your creative development professionally moving forward?
absolutely. I think what's been really good for me is they hold them monthly. So it's almost
nice.
like it's a way to meet up with colleagues, because like you said, it's such a solo thing that I'm doing at home in my studio by myself.
Yeah.
It's nice to sort of have coworkers that you meet up with every month to do something that's just fun. It's just a good time. And like I said, I've seen so many new techniques that I've stolen from other people. And
iterated on.
yeah. And then I sort of bring that into my own and work it into my practice.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I'm sure, as you were saying, like it's a good networking opportunity with other artists, but of course, exposure for you and your work too,
Absolutely.
because I'm sure there's groups of friends or supporters that come to all of them each month, or people that stumble upon it. So it's nice also having that consistent, dependable event that new people can discover you by. They can come find you on social media, stay along with your journey. And it's almost that like some people do markets every single month for the same reason. You do live events each month, which is more of that performative aspect to it.
Yeah, it's been great, and it kind of keeps my work from getting stale, I think, because every once in a while I have to really dive in, and with the 20 minutes you have to really hone in on what are the key elements of this painting, because with 20 minutes you can't rely on layers, you can't rely on going back and taking time. You have to really sort of know what's important and what you can sort of skip.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you practice at all beforehand?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Okay. Well, because I feel like just thinking about my creative practice alone, I will easily just stand in my studio and stare at a piece for 20 minutes before I do another brushstroke. Like another artist walked in the other day and I was just like, just like staring at a wall in the middle of this room for like easily 20, 30 minutes.
Hashtag artist life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I'm at home, I absolutely do that with my work and my stuff that's not timed. I will spend the whole afternoon just trying to figure out what's next. But with the art battle, what I usually do is I actually create a playlist for myself that's 20 minutes long. And I'll
Oh,
practice.
okay.
Sometimes I'll practice with the playlist ahead of time just to sort of get in my mind. It helps me keep track of the time as well to know like when I'm
I
getting
get to
closer.
this song, I'm halfway.
Yep, yeah. When I hear this song, I better pull it together because I've got
Wrap
5
it
minutes
up.
left. And then I'll listen to it a few times and run through it and do practice pieces. Most of my work that I do, well, that I have done up to this point, has more been kind of an intuitive style. So a lot of it I don't plan out ahead of time.
Right.
Now it's going to be interesting to see if I bring some of this because now I'm working from photos recently.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to bring that and try to blend that with the 20 minutes because that's a whole nother challenge.
That would
But
be
I think that's what I'm going to do next time. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. And so before we move on, I am curious, you mentioned like you have to kind of establish what those core elements of your paintings are that you need to include. For you and your work, what do you feel like those core elements are? Like what have you learned about your style through this as like the essential elements?
Well, it's taught me to think more about which colors I choose for sure. Whereas when I have all the time in the world, I'll throw any color up there and use that as part of the chaos and then try to fix it from there. But I've really found myself being much more deliberate with any mark I add onto the canvas. It has to add something. There's no throwaway bits when you're only got 20 minutes.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
I use a mix of charcoal and acrylics, and I've used a little spray paint and some soft pastels to sort of figure out the way to get the most color and layering without actually having time for layering.
Yeah, because you don't have time if you're going to do thicker parts for it to dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to add something else.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, well, 20 minutes. I think this is good training for, you have 5 kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
I'm used to creating in tiny little spurts.
Well, and that's what I want to ask you about, because I'm like, it can be challenging enough, for artists who are like, wait, besides painting, I have to spend time on outreach, networking, social media, creating my website, updating product listings. Like it already as it is, it's a lot that eats into painting time. Yep. But then on top of that, you are a primary caregiver to 5 kiddos.
Yes.
How do you make time for art? Like, do you schedule it? Like, how do you do you close the door and say y'all need to stay over there?
It helps that now they're all in school.
Okay.
So like I have a bit of time back. Like I would not have been able to do this 5 years ago. There's just no way.
Okay.
When they were all little and they were home, it was too much.
Yeah. And for the listeners' reference, what is like that age range of your kids now? Of course, school age. But
yeah, the oldest she just turned 14 last week, and the youngest is 5.5.
Okay.
So yeah, they're kindergarten through grade is she in now? 8th grade.
Yeah, but going from newborn to 8, 9-year-old, that would not be.
Oh, if I had a kid under 5, there's no way. That's why I abandoned photography as a career, because I was trying to do the career and trying to do the kids, and I just was like, I'm messing everything up. I'm half-assing everything.
I gotta find.
I'm just gonna focus on one thing.
And I think that's super valuable. I mean, Adriana and I both don't currently have any kids, but I think that's a common conversation that I've heard from a lot of artists of, especially with Instagram, as we've mentioned in this episode, like taking so much influence from Instagram or looking at, it can be sometimes, I think, a glorified narrative of, oh, I'm like a nap time artist. So like I just make paintings while my kids are like peacefully napping for 4-hour blocks and
do that?
sleeping through the night. And like
not mine.
Like I think that like somewhat toxic side of social media can make it seem that way. I'm like, what do you mean you can't just have this huge budding art career while you're taking care of your kids?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a huge and really awesome statement to make of like every phase of life, whether it's raising a family, whether it is aspects of a professional career, just other commitments that you have and value, then it's maybe not conducive to a creative practice in every single phase of life.
Yeah, and I did actually make a very deliberate choice to pursue my creative practice. Not necessarily, it was before I even started painting. I realized that I hadn't been doing photography. I hadn't been doing anything creatively, and felt really crummy as a result. So I decided to take one day a week. That was my day. and I wasn't going to do any taking care of the kids. I mean, obviously I took care of the kids, but while they were at
You're
school,
on your own.
like while they were at school, you know, I wasn't going to do any arranging doctor appointments, or I wasn't going to clean the house, and I wasn't going to
no
do anything.
errands.
It was just Thursdays were sacred. That was my day.
I love that.
And even if it looked like, you know, reading poetry or listening to music or maybe taking a nap or whatever it was, I took a lot of online classes, and it was just, that was my day to focus on whatever I felt drawn to at the time.
I think that's so powerful. Just like blocking off that time, whatever you feel compelled to do. And then if it's the creative voices that come to you, then that's where it can go.
Yeah. And it's,
Still do the Thursdays?
I have fallen away from doing Thursdays, except that Thursdays now are the call that we have with Love Lux. So
That's true.
that has helped keep me on track to having a little bit of accountability.
Perfect.
But I've been wanting to get back to more of a focus on creating on that specific day, because it's fluctuated a lot over the last year and a half or 2 years, however long it's been.
Yeah, I feel it's good to have a day when
Yeah.
it's Wednesdays, and
Yeah.
it's like I try to minimize appointments and things like that. And it's like sacred creating day,
Yeah.
you know, as much as possible.
I think I've fallen away from doing that, and it makes it more difficult, and I think it does need to come back.
All right,
Yeah.
we support this.
All right. Now I have a reason to do it.
Accountability. It's
You're
recorded.
Excellent.
It's recorded.
So currently, do you just, especially with the kids being in school, do you take time every single day to just do a little bit of something, or just wait for the time to come? What does that look like? You don't have one designated day.
I try to do something every day. Although I have not so much space for canvases in my house anymore. So
And physical
it's a
space.
little limited because I'm a little bit overwhelmed because I'm prolific, shall we say, in creating paintings. But I do try to do something every day, whether it's paint or at least look at something, or, you know, spend some time on an Instagram post, because Instagram is, yes, it's like a marketing thing, but also I've been using Instagram as a creative outlet for well over a decade in my personal account.
Yeah.
And so I sort of transferred that attitude over towards my professional account, because it started out, the Instagram, just as a way to show my work. I wasn't thinking career-wise at all. It was just a way to connect with other artists and see other art and see where I wanted to go. So yeah, I take a little time every day to create something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that
Also-
idea of like shifting your thought about social media and creativity, of how what you share on social media can be a creative outlet in itself. Or like, what concepts are you exploring with your work, but also what narratives and stories do you want to share online with other artists, with future collectors?
Yep.
And so often a lot of what you discuss on social media and share is ADHD and other mental health challenges. Do you mind
Yes.
sharing more about that with our listeners?
I do not mind sharing. I am very open about pretty much anything. So for me with ADHD, it's almost, I don't know how it ties into the creative practice, but I know that having a creative practice helps, because I need to have a lot of things going on all the time. Like, that's just what my brain likes. It likes the chaos. It likes so much going on. And I've found that if I can focus that on my creativity, and it helps me deal with and have more patience with other areas in my life. And I think that's important, and that's why I share it with other people. I've had a lot of people come up to me, like not come up to me, but like email me and say, hey, I love that you shared about your ADHD. I think I am struggling with the same things, and they end up going to find help too. So I've found that talking about stuff really has an impact, and help other people. And that's one of the reasons that I find it important to continue to do that.
I love that. Plus, it breaks down the barrier a little bit. So if any person that wants to pursue an artistic career is like, oh no, I can't do it because I have ADHD, you're like, no, yeah, you can. You can do
Yeah.
both.
Yeah,
Like, it can be both.
It's not easy, but it's definitely doable.
Yeah.
And I think once I figure it out, I'm very close to figuring it out. I feel like I just have to laugh when I said I would come and do this podcast. I was like, it means I have to have everything figured out.
No.
Then I realized, no, I just have to, have something of value, and I think I do.
Yes, and I think it can be difficult for those things, whether it's a podcast interview or a exhibition application. Like you almost feel like you have to have everything tied up with this perfect bow. And like, yes, you want to put your best self forward, but I think especially when it comes to social media, that's where it can be so powerful as any company, but especially as artists thinking about your creative practice and what you're sharing, is you're just sharing your experiences. You're sharing your ideas, and if it helps someone else out, great. But especially as artists, as we mentioned before, like our work can only be made by us. Even if someone else were to try to imitate your style, there's influences that you don't even know are influencing you that come out in your work. And so every part of us as artists are connected to the work that we make. And so the powerful thing with social media or your website, or if you have a blog, is you get to share which stories you want, and of course have all responsibility and the choice to hold back which stories you don't want to. You don't have to be transparent about everything if you don't want to, but if you want to share how this is part of your life and a very integral part of your ideas or your creative practice, then that's bound to help someone else or give your future collectors more insight into the work that you make, and they feel more connected to your work. They can see that in your brushstrokes, in the gestures.
Absolutely. Yeah. And besides the ADHD, another thing I really manage with art is I have seasonal depression and I live in Canada. So that's like a double whammy. So I get really low energy and low mood in the winter, and having the painting to look forward to each day has given me sort of a really good way to keep myself going and keep myself on track with other things too. Because it's always something new, something exciting, something I haven't done before. And that's sort of what I need to keep it going.
I love that. And of course, you always have a home down in North Carolina, taking road trips.
That's right.
To our 80-degree days in November.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. That's how I survive winter, is I know that I can escape every once in a while.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. But as you're mentioning, well, we all are, like social media, and of course you have the kiddos and keep track of everything. There's a lot of responsibilities on your plate.
True.
How do you keep it, or attempt to keep it, sustainable and avoid burnout?
Attempt to keep it is probably the key word there.
Hey, it's a goal.
Because I saw that question, I was like, wait, I'm supposed to avoid burnout? No, but it's just, I guess, a matter of figuring out, well, it's sort of the same thing as 20-minute painting. Figure out what's most important, and then don't worry about the rest. So for me, that's making sure my kids are doing well. They're happy, they're healthy enough, they're happy enough, and fed, and they go to school, and that's good enough. I just make sure that I put myself as a priority, because I did hit like a real true burnout like 2 years ago, and the painting and being creative, the creative process helped me sort of claw my way out of that. And the more time I spend on my creative pursuits, the more energy I have to take care of my other responsibilities.
And you have your spouse too that you can rely on, right?
Yes, he works from home now, which has been amazing.
So like if you're feeling the burnout level like creeping around the corner, you can say like, I need half a day, something, take the kiddos away. Okay.
He's been super good. Yeah, we're a good team.
Okay. Shoot.
Yeah, no, I would not be able to, I don't know. I mean, I guess everybody can do it, what they need to do, but I'm very grateful to have support that I do.
System.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
And before we wrap up, I am curious, because when we first met, you had just gotten back from an artist retreat that you had done. Do you mind sharing with our listeners that idea? Because I absolutely love it. Like, what made you plan it, and what that whole process looked like?
Great. Well, that was right around the time that I was just hitting burnout. I couldn't do anything. I had, at that point, I was starting my Thursdays, and I was trying to be creative and actively look for some way to have a creative process. But it got to a point where I couldn't fit it into the Thursdays anymore. So I just thought I need like a chunk of time. I need a week. I need to take some time and just focus on myself, not on the kids, not on the house, not on anything else. Just focus on myself. So I found a cabin and I rented a cabin off Airbnb, like in Nowheresville in the woods in like the mountains in North Carolina. And I drove down here in the spring and spent the week teaching myself to paint and reading and going on hikes and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was amazing. It was like the first time that I took a real amount of time just for myself. And it was great. I realized that this was something that I could bring back into my real life and start to incorporate the daily creative time, the making sure I have my priorities for myself, that I factor in. And that was just cool. And I've gone back a second year now too. So
Wait. Okay, hold on. I want to give people a little bit more logistics of this because I think at first when people mention an artist retreat,
right,
a lot of people might think like, oh yeah, this artist or this other company, whatever, we'll do this all inclusive.
Yeah, no.
Your meals are cooked. You go somewhere fancy like France or Morocco. Kind of thing. So for a lot of people, depending on their financial situation, they're like, an artist retreat is not doable.
Right.
But when you say a cabin, out in Nowheresville, I mean, we're talking this thing's off the grid, right?
Yeah.
Does it even have electricity?
No electricity.
No internet.
No running water.
Oh boy. No heating.
No.
Maybe a fireplace.
There's a fireplace, like a wood stove.
So it's basically like a hunting cabin.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a hunting
like
cabin.
a fishing cabin, I think, technically.
And you didn't even fly in.
No,
I drove.
I drove
over 12 hours.
Yeah, it was, and it was during the pandemic too. Like it was questionable.
Oh my!
I mean, you're just driving to go be by yourself. So
exactly. That's what I just heard.
The ultimate isolation.
Exactly.
Self-isolation.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, it was. It's not for everyone. It's definitely not something that everyone would be interested in. But if it appeals to you, I highly recommend.
So it's like a Hermitage.
Yeah.
And you can kind of do your own variations of it. Maybe have internet or running water where you like even just doing.
Well, there was internet at the top of one hill. I could go up to the top of one hill and update my Instagram and let my husband know I had died.
Yeah, and then walk back down the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I absolutely love that. I think that's such a cool. Like some people need that just jolt into their creative practice, and especially you having that self-awareness to know like. I need to do something for me, taking that initiative and recognizing that, all right, I need time away from responsibilities, really get back down to Mother Nature, to your roots, deep in your thoughts, I'm sure, of like, who am I? What are my priorities? What do I value? And how can I take this into my life moving forward?
Yeah.
That's definitely one of those pivotal, life-changing trips.
It felt absolutely life-changing. And it was just gorgeous start to finish. It was just, I don't know, I can't even put it. It's been 2 years and I still can't put it into words properly.
Yeah.
what that trip did for me.
It's incredible. I feel like, especially from everyone has that, not rock bottom story, but it like mentally just like, what am I doing? Where you question everything. And for a lot of people, that's the start of their creative practice. Yep. And so I feel like your story is pretty epic. That start.
That was
epic origin stories.
Yeah, it's been good. Maybe one of these years I need to plan an exhibition out there.
Yeah,
that's sort of that might need to happen someday.
Yeah, put together like a documentary type little video, like a little memoir.
Circle. Yeah.
Tied in with a whole blog.
It's stuff I'm thinking about.
Painting.
No, there's a lot of threads. There's a book in there somewhere too. I'm just trying to find it.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Let it marinate a bit. But I love that you have gone back and done it again, and it sounds like it'll be a common practice for you, and potentially hosting your own retreat in the future.
That's not outside the realm of possibility.
That would be so cool.
That would be cool.
Well, we're so excited that we've gotten to know you through the past few years, and that we will be on that journey with you, probably attending your retreat one day.
I love it.
No, this sounds amazing. Well, obviously this is going to change as your career progresses and you're trailblazing your way. But as it stands right now, how do you define success as an artist?
guess having the space to use my creativity to process whatever I'm going through. That's sort of how I define success as an artist. It's even though I've been creative since forever, as long as I can remember, I didn't start calling myself an artist until probably last year, because it always felt too stuffy, too like pretentious, to be like, I'm an artist. And I think success as an artist is, are you making art? Yes, then that's success.
When you're spending the time for it, you're setting the time aside. You're doing a self
You're
retreat.
making art, and it doesn't have to be, are you painting? Are you making art? Your life could be your art. Just the way you live, the way you keep your home, the way you interact with people, all of that is part of being an artist to me. So success is just living life with that viewpoint of life as art.
Love that. Couldn't have said it better myself. So what is one piece of advice you wish you had heard before you got started on this creative journey?
Piece of advice. Just do it. Just don't be afraid to go into the fine arts section of the art store, I think. Because I used to find that very intimidating. As a photography student when I was in college, I would go to the photography, like to the art store, but I'd stay in the craft section. And because I felt I wasn't qualified, I wasn't allowed in the fine art supplies. And
That's
yes,
so
you're allowed to
interesting.
go over there. You're allowed to buy things you feel like you have no purpose, like no
business buying.
owning. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can do that. You can do that. You don't have to be professional to buy professional paints.
Yeah.
Just do it.
That's so interesting because you kind of like unlocked a memory for me as well, like being either like in high school or even if it is like in Michael's craft store or a more like small art store local, then it's interesting how they have such sectioned off areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people do stay in that craft section because there's a legitimacy of like, oh, who am I to be over
I'm a
here?
fine artist.
Right. Because it's almost like that title of, oh, well, who do you think you are? Like you call yourself an artist. Like what do you have to show for it? There's this feeling or like the inner critic saying like, oh, well, you have to prove it to be worthy to be in the aisle.
Yeah, in this rarefied air we have over the fine art section. These just paint brushes, like babies play with them. Like,
yeah. Well, there's also the financial side too for some folks.
Yeah.
Where they're like, I can't afford anything.
And if that's the case, buy crappy products and splash that all over the place. Like, you know,
right.
It doesn't have, you don't have to spend a lot of money to.
Right.
Yeah, my brain goes to like, if anybody's listening to this and you have that apprehension to go into the fine art section, the three of us are officially giving you permission right now. Go walk in there and you can at least try to get the primaries and mix almost any color out.
And they sell a kit.
And
like
have fun.
I first started painting. The first painting I ever did, it was on a 16 by 20 that came in a 3-pack with a like little sample pack of like 10 colors and like 3 brushes.
Yeah.
And it was just a kit.
Yeah.
And that's how I started painting.
Yeah.
So.
And you save money while you're usually. So
especially with the holiday season coming up. I know a lot of stores, Michael's, any local art store, they're normally doing those types of kits intended for either students or young professionals that are artists, but that's the perfect time to get bundles for yourself. Whether you're currently making work or you want to explore a new medium. That's my favorite part about the holidays. Yes, gift giving to other people, but they have these perfect packages at a discount of like, yes, I do want to sample all these different acrylic mediums where you just get like a small ounce of each, but that's all you need to start exploring and getting your toes wet with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, speaking of art stores, no, you just reminded me like some of the stores near us, like Jerry's Artorama, will sometimes do those packages near the entrance. And it's meant for when you're going to give a gift to someone that you consider artsy in your life, but you have no idea what to give them. Go to your local art store. A lot of times they'll have pre-made bundles. You just tell them what age range and roughly what medium you believe that person works in, and they'll be like, here's a kit, and you save money on top of
Yeah.
that because it's a bundle. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I loved receiving those as a kid. It's like, oh,
Absolutely. Well, because
Christmas.
sometimes it's something you might not have bought for yourself. Too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I guess now I need to try, spray paint. That's how I got into using spray paint. Was I got it as a free like gift at,
Little
at an
sample
event
thing.
I did, and they were like, here's some spray paint. And I was like, all right, let's go for it. Let's see what this does.
Well, I think we all know the answer to this one, but just in case. If someone handed you $100 right now, what would you splurge it on or invest in? It has to be something that brings you joy and is related to your art or business.
The biggest canvas I could get.
I love that.
The biggest canvas I could get my hands on. That's what I was splurging on.
Wait, what card did you bring? I'm like, there's some art
rollable.
store scene here. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Love that. Love that. Definitely no surprise with that answer,
Yeah.
especially if people are watching your videos or seeing your work on social media.
Absolutely love
Which,
big.
yes, which before we wrap it up and say goodbye, what opportunities are you looking forward to coming up, and how can our listeners stay connected to you after listening to this episode?
Okay, well, like I mentioned, the art battles. I have one coming up this weekend, but I do them every month. So I've been doing a bunch in Quebec City and in Boston. And what else am I looking forward to? I've got a couple of art fairs on the horizon and a solo exhibition at a local library next year. So some cool things coming down the pipeline.
Very exciting. And so how can people stay connected to you and look at all these amazing opportunities coming your way?
Well, I have professed my love for Instagram. So that is always going to be the algorithm be damned. That is going to be the best way to get a hold of me because that's where I love to hang out. But I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok and everywhere as Amanda Jeanne Artworks.
Awesome. And so we'll make sure that's linked in today's show notes.
Fantastic.
Oh, this has been a delightful conversation. We're so glad you joined us. Literally came from Canada.
Yes.
So freaking cool. Joined us in person so that we could have the opportunity to talk to you about all things art career, art life with you. So thanks so much for being on the podcast today, Amanda.
Super glad to be here. It was really, really a pleasure.
Yes. Thank you so much. As always, everything that we talked about today, including Amanda's contact information, will be linked in today's show notes, along with our blog and links to all of our other podcast episodes.
And if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes and share some of the fun tidbits, maybe the favorite parts of this episode, you can follow us on social media at Minute May Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sander Studio on all platforms. Or you can follow the podcast at Level Up Artist on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.